What if Jesus was not a surprise? What if he did not appear out of nowhere in the New Testament? Christianity does not merely claim that Jesus was important. It claims he was promised. So the deeper question is, was Jesus expected? In the last video, we asked, why Jesus? Why does Christianity center everything on him? This video takes the next step. If Jesus is the Messiah, then Christianity is the claim that God's promises, rescue, and kingdom all meet in him. Messiah means anointed one. In the Old Testament, prophets, priests, and kings could be anointed for a role. So Messiah language is about calling, authority, sacrifice, and kingdom. Israel was not just waiting for a teacher. They were waiting for God's promised rescuer. The case for Jesus as Messiah is not built on one random verse. It is a whole story. Promise after promise, pattern after pattern, expectation after expectation. And Christians claim those threads come together in Jesus. The first thread begins in Genesis. After sin enters the world, God speaks judgment over the serpent. In Genesis 3:15, the offspring of the woman will crush the serpent's head. Not every detail is explained there, but the hope is clear. Evil will not have the final word. Then God calls Abraham. In Genesis 12:3, God says that through Abraham, all the families of the earth will be blessed. That promise is bigger than one man and bigger than one nation. From early in Scripture, God's plan includes the nations. But Genesis 15 makes the promise heavier. God tells Abram to bring animals, and the animals are split in half. In that covenant scene, walking between the pieces showed the seriousness of the promise. But Abraham does not walk through. God does. The smoking firepot and flaming torch pass between the pieces. God takes the weight of the covenant on himself. Then we get to David. In 2 Samuel 7, God promises that David's offspring will reign and that his kingdom will be established. This is why the Messiah is connected to kingship. Israel was waiting for a king, a son of David. That is why Matthew opens by calling Jesus the Son of David and the Son of Abraham. That is not filler. That is a claim. Matthew is saying Jesus belongs to the promise. And when people call Jesus Son of David, they are using Messiah language, hope language. But the story also gives us something unexpected. The Messiah theme is not only about kingship and victory, there is also suffering. Isaiah 53 speaks of a servant who is despised, rejected, wounded, and yet bears the sins of others. That matters because the cross can look like defeat. If you only expect the Messiah to conquer immediately, the cross looks like failure. But if Scripture points to a suffering servant, the cross becomes something deeper. Not weakness, not accident, not defeat. The king suffers. The servant bears sin. The promise moves forward through sacrifice. Then, Daniel 7 gives another major piece. Daniel sees one like a son of man coming with the clouds of heaven. This figure receives dominion, glory, and a kingdom that will not pass away. So when Jesus calls himself the Son of Man, he is stepping into that expectation. Before the council, Jesus is asked if he is the Christ, the Son of the Blessed. Jesus connects his answer to Daniel 7. He speaks of the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven. That is not merely a good teacher talking. So someone might ask, are Christians just reading Jesus back into the Old Testament? That is a fair question. But the case is not one isolated connection. It is the pattern. The seed who defeats evil, the offspring of Abraham who blesses the nations, the son of David who reigns, the servant who suffers, the Son of Man with an everlasting kingdom. And Jesus himself taught this. In Luke 24, after his resurrection, Jesus says that everything written about him in the law of Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms had to be fulfilled. He did not say, forget the old story. He showed them where the story was going. So why does this matter? Because if Jesus is the Messiah, then Christianity is not just another religious option. It is the claim that God kept his promise. The promise from Genesis, the promise to Abraham, the covenant God carried himself, the promise to David. All of it meets in Jesus. So do not only ask whether Jesus was influential, ask whether he was expected. Do not only ask whether he taught good things, ask whether he fits the promises. If Jesus is the Messiah, his words are not optional inspiration. His death is not a tragic accident. His resurrection is not a random miracle. Was Jesus the one God promised? Jesus does not appear out of nowhere. He steps into a world broken by sin, a promise that evil would be defeated, a covenant where God carries the weight, a king from David's line, a servant who suffers, a son of man with everlasting authority. The Christian claim is simple. Jesus is the promised one. But that raises the next question. If Jesus really was the promised Messiah, why did so many people miss him? Why was he rejected? That is what we need to look at next.